I found a number buried on a Treasury Department website last month. It is not hidden. It is not classified. Anyone can find it. But the way it is filed, tucked inside a table, on a subpage, behind 2 clicks nobody makes, tells you everything about whether you were supposed to see it. If you earn between $55,000 and $160,000 and you keep most of your savings in a bank account or a retirement fund you have not touched in 2 years, this number is about your money. Over the last 4 years, the average American household lost $2,437 per year in purchasing power that never showed up as a debit on any statement. That is $9,748 gone. Not spent, not stolen, evaporated. By the time this video ends, you will know exactly who took it, how they did it, and how to build something they cannot touch. And the part that made me redo the whole spreadsheet. The government already sells a product designed to protect against exactly this. They just do not advertise it. Picture your financial life as a house. Every dollar you own is inside it. Your savings, your retirement account, the equity in your home if you have one, all inside. Now picture a thermostat on the wall. You did not install it. You did not choose the setting. And the person who controls the dial does not live in your house. Every time they turn it down, the air inside gets colder. Your dollars do not disappear. They just stop keeping you warm. And most people respond the only way they know how. They pile on more blankets. They save harder. They work longer. They skip the vacation. Nobody told them the problem is not the blankets. The problem is the thermostat. Here is what I mean. Since the Federal Reserve was created in 1913, the US dollar has lost approximately 96% of its purchasing power. That is not a conspiracy claim. That is CPI data published by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The government's own thermometer confirms the temperature has been falling for over a century. But here is what makes that statistic useless by itself. You did not live through a century. You lived through the last 15 years. And the last 15 years are where the thermostat dial moved fastest. Stay with me through one number. It will reframe everything else. In January 2008, the total M2 money supply in the United States, that is every dollar in checking accounts, savings accounts, money markets, and short-term deposits, sat at roughly $7.7 trillion. By April 2022, it had crossed $21.7 trillion. That is not gradual expansion. That is a 182% increase in 14 years. Your salary did not triple. Your savings account did not triple, but the total pool of dollars competing for the same goods, the same houses, the same groceries, that nearly tripled. The thermostat was not nudged, it was cranked. Now I want you to meet Nora. She is 52. She earns $118,000 managing operations at a logistics firm. She is divorced. She has 2 kids, one in college, one starting next fall. 4 years ago, Nora checked her 401k, and it had crossed $340,000. She took a screenshot. She texted her sister, "I'm going to be okay." She has not looked at the allocation since. I will come back to Nora. What happened to that $340,000 is the reason this video exists. So who controls the thermostat? And how does it actually work? When the Federal Reserve expands the money supply through quantitative easing, emergency lending, or adjusting reserve requirements, it increases the number of dollars circulating without a corresponding increase in goods and services. More dollars chasing the same output. Prices adjust upward, not because things got more valuable, because each dollar got less powerful. Here's the thing. The official Consumer Price Index says inflation ran at 3.3% in March 2026. Okay, but the Ludwig Institute for Shared Economic Prosperity, which tracks what lower and middle-income households actually pay for housing, food, transportation, and medical care, has published data showing their true living cost index has risen 1.4 times faster than CPI since 2001. That one stopped me. If you are someone who has been saving diligently and still feels like you are falling behind, you are not imagining it. The thermometer the government uses and the temperature you actually feel in your house are calibrated differently, and the gap between them is where your purchasing power quietly disappears. A savings account paying 4% in a world where your actual cost of living rises 5 to 6% is not a safe position. It is a slow-moving loss with a reassuring name. And honestly, there is a fair counter-argument here. Moderate inflation is not accidental. Economists across the political spectrum will tell you that a 2 to 3% inflation target encourages spending, discourages hoarding, and keeps the economy moving. Deflation, the opposite, is historically associated with unemployment, depression, and economic contraction. Japan's lost decades are the textbook example. That is a reasonable argument. It breaks down in one specific place. The 2 to 3% target has not been the reality. From 2020 through early 2024, cumulative inflation ran well above that target, and the tools ordinary savers were given, savings accounts, CDs, standard bond funds, were designed for the target environment, not the actual one. The architecture assumed a thermostat set at 68. It was set at 58 and falling. Nora checked her 401k last month. The balance said $347,000. She almost felt good about it, $7,000 more than her screenshot. Then she ran a calculation she had never run before. She typed her balance into an inflation-adjusted purchasing power calculator, the kind the Minneapolis Federal Reserve publishes for free. Her $347,000 in April 2026 buys what $298,000 bought when she took that screenshot in 2022. She did not lose money. Her statement never went red. Nobody stole anything. The thermostat just moved, and every dollar inside her house got a little colder. Nora sat at her kitchen table. The calculator was still on her phone screen. She did not text her sister. Now you might be thinking, my retirement account has investments, not just cash. I am in index funds. This does not apply to me. Maybe. Let me ask you one question. Do you know the expense ratio on your 401k funds? Because data from the Department of Labor shows the median all-in fee for 401k plans is 0.75% annually. For smaller plans, it runs above 1.2%. At 1%, a career of contributions loses roughly $469,000 to fees over a working lifetime, according to Truthify's 2026 benchmarks. That is the gap. That is a second thermostat you did not know existed, one built into the wall of your retirement account. Okay, here is where we are. You have seen the thermostat. You know who controls it. You have seen what it does to savings accounts, and you have seen what a second hidden thermostat does inside your retirement account. That is the cold side. Now let me show you what generates its own heat, because here is the thing most financial content gets wrong. They tell you to buy assets. They never explain why certain assets resist the thermostat and others do not. The mechanism matters, because once you see the mechanism, you never buy anything the same way again. The next 3 things I am going to show you are not tips. They are 3 different heating systems, and one of them is sold by the same government that controls the thermostat. Let us start with the one nobody talks about, because it is genuinely embarrassing for the system. The United States Treasury sells something called TIPS, Treasury Inflation Protected Securities. The principal value adjusts with the Consumer Price Index. If inflation rises 4%, your principal rises 4%. When tips mature, you get the adjusted principal or the original, whichever is higher. Read that again in plain language. The entity that controls the thermostat also sells you insulation against the thermostat, and it is backed by the full faith and credit of the same government running the printing press. I checked it twice. They also sell I bonds, Series I savings bonds, with a rate that combines a fixed rate and an inflation rate reset every 6 months. The purchase limit is $10,000 per person per calendar year. Not enough to solve the whole problem. Enough to prove the government knows the problem exists. And honestly, the fact that most Americans have never heard of tips or I bonds tells you everything about whose temperature they were designed to manage. Institutional investors and sovereign wealth funds hold tips by the billions. The average household holds 0. Now, the bigger heating systems. And I want to talk about gold and real estate together because they work as a unit. Gold does one thing and it does it well. It holds its purchasing power over long time horizons. An ounce of gold in 2001 cost roughly $271. That same ounce today sits near $4,800. That is not gold becoming more useful. That is the dollar becoming less useful measured against a reference point that does not move. That is real money. Your money. Central banks understand this. In 2022, central banks globally purchased 1,136 tons of gold, the most since the 1950s, according to the World Gold Council. In 2023, another 1,037 tons. In 2024, over 1,045 tons. 3 consecutive years of buying at levels not seen in modern history. Nobody prints that on your statement. But gold has a limitation. It does not generate income. It does not compound. It sits there and preserves. In the thermostat metaphor, gold is insulation. It keeps the cold from getting worse. It does not heat the house. Real estate with fixed-rate debt is the furnace. Here is why. When you borrow $320,000 at a fixed rate in 2026, your monthly payment is locked, frozen in today's dollars, but you pay it back over 30 years with future dollars. And if the thermostat keeps moving, if inflation runs at 3.5% annually, those future dollars are colder, worth less. Your fixed debt gets cheaper to carry every single year in real terms. I ran this calculation 4 times because the result felt wrong. At 3.5% annual inflation, $320,000 of debt today carries the real purchasing power burden of roughly $161,000 20 years from now. Same number on the statement, half the real weight. And it gets worse, for the thermostat operator, that is. If you have tenants, your income adjusts with the market. Rents move with inflation. Your payment does not. Your cost shrinks in real terms, while your revenue grows in nominal terms. The thermostat that erodes your savings is now heating your rental income. That is not a theory. That is arithmetic. Let me tell you about Marcus. He is 34. Software engineer, makes $142,000, has $89,000 in index funds and $62,000 in a high-yield savings account. He is engaged. He and his fiancée are planning a wedding and trying to buy a house in the same window. 8 months ago, Marcus bookmarked a house at $385,000. Last week, it was listed at $412,000. His savings account, earning 4%, grew by $1,900 in that same period. The house outran his savings by $25,100. Marcus closes Zillow at midnight. He does not tell his fiancée how far behind they have fallen. He sets his alarm for 5:45 a.m. He will keep saving. That is the only tool anyone gave him. He is doing everything right, and the thermostat is winning. Now, someone is thinking about Bitcoin, and someone else just mentally left the room because I said Bitcoin. Both of you, stay. Bitcoin's only relevant feature in this conversation is its supply ceiling. 21 million coins total, ever. As of March 2026, 20 million have been mined. The remaining 1 million will trickle out over the next 114 years. There are 330 million Americans. If each wanted one full coin, that would require more than 15 times the total supply that will ever exist. That scarcity is not a promise or a policy. It is code that would require the consensus of more computing power than any single government controls to change. In the thermostat metaphor, Bitcoin is a room the thermostat cannot reach. It is not warm, it is not cold, it is temperature independent, and that property, immunity from the dial, is either worth a small allocation or it is worth nothing. There is no in between. But here is what the other video probably did not tell you. Bitcoin dropped 78% from its November 2021 high to its November 2022 low. 78%. If your thermostat protection makes you sell in panic, you have not built a heating system. You have built a trap. And that is why allocation, 5 to 10% of investable assets, maximum, is not a suggestion. It is a survival specification. And it gets worse. Gold has its own version. Between September 2011 and December 2015, gold fell 45%. Anyone who bought at the peak and sold during the trough did not lose money to inflation. They lost money to their own nervous system. The hardest part of building a thermostat-proof house is not choosing the materials. It is not tearing them out during the first cold snap. Okay, you have the full picture. The thermostat, the mechanism, the three things that generate their own heat, and the behavioral trap that makes people remove their insulation at the worst possible moment. Now let me give you something you can actually use. I call it the Three-Temperature Audit. 3 phases. Each one builds on the last. If you only do phase 1, you are still ahead of almost everyone you know. Phase 1. Take your temperature. This takes 9 minutes. Pull up the Minneapolis Federal Reserve inflation calculator. It is free. Plug in the dollar value of your total savings and retirement accounts from 3 years ago. See what that number equals in today's purchasing power. Then compare it to your current balance. If your current balance is lower than the inflation-adjusted number, your house is getting colder and you did not know. Write down the gap. That is your temperature reading. That is the number on the Treasury website I found at 2 a.m. When you have that number, you have something almost no one has, a real measurement, not a feeling, not a guess, a number. Phase 2. Find the cold spots. This takes about 45 minutes on a Saturday. Go through every account you own. Categorize each one into 3 buckets. Bucket 1, fully exposed to the thermostat. Cash, savings accounts, CDs, nominal bonds, money market funds. Bucket 2, partially insulated. Equities, which historically outrun inflation but carry volatility. Bucket 3, thermostat resistant. Tips, I-bonds, gold, real estate with fixed-rate debt, Bitcoin in cold storage. Add up each bucket. If bucket 1 is more than 25% of your total, you are overexposed. If bucket 3 is 0, and for most Americans it is, you have no heating system. You are surviving on blankets. Then check your 401k expense ratios. Every fund, write them down. If any fund charges above 0.7%, you have found a second thermostat. Your plan may offer an index option at 0.03%. Same hallway, different room. Phase 3, install the heating. This is the ongoing work. Start with the government's own tool. Open a Treasury Direct account and buy I-bonds up to the annual limit. 10 minutes of paperwork. That is your space heater. Small but immediate. Next, evaluate your gold position. If it is 0, it should not be. 5 to 12% of investable assets in a low-cost gold ETF or physical bullion is not a bet. It is insulation. The central banks buying over 1,000 tons a year for 3 consecutive years are not speculating. They are insulating. For real estate, if direct ownership is accessible, a fixed-rate mortgage on an income-producing property is the strongest inflation position in personal finance. If it is not accessible, publicly traded REITs, companies required by the IRS to distribute 90% of taxable income, carry long-term fixed-rate debt on their balance sheets. Same furnace mechanics, different entry point. For Bitcoin, 5 to 10% maximum, held in cold storage or a regulated custodian, not on an exchange. Sized by your ability to watch it fall 78% without touching it. If you cannot hold through that decline, reduce the position until you can. If Nora, who had $385,000 sitting entirely in Bucket 1 and Bucket 2, moves even $40,000 into Bucket 3, she recaptures approximately $1,100 to $2,200 per year in real purchasing power that was previously disappearing. Over 12 years until her planned retirement, that is $13,000 to $26,000 in real terms. Not dramatic, not viral. Enough to cover a year of the property taxes on the house she plans to retire in. That is the point. Not getting rich. Getting warm. You were not bad with money. Your money was in a house where someone else controlled the temperature. Now you know where the thermostat is, who turns the dial, and what it means to build something that generates its own heat. That number on the Treasury website, the one I found at 2 a.m., is now your starting point. Phase 1 of the audit. Your temperature reading. It takes 9 minutes. And it will tell you more about your financial life than anything your bank has ever printed on a statement. You cannot control the thermostat. You were never supposed to, but you can build a house that does not need it. Next week, I am going to show you the 4-line items buried inside your 401k statement that most people have never read. And one of them is quietly rerouting over $1,200 a year from your retirement into someone else's revenue. Same thermostat problem, different wall. If this is the kind of analysis that actually changes how you think about money, subscribe. 1 video a week. No sponsors, no product pitches, just the temperature readings nobody else is publishing.